اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور.
سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور. صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور، يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور. صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور،
يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور.
راقيا بالعلم نحو النجم مزدان شكور، رافضا كل التدني رافضا نفس الغرور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. وعلي ثم بالدين معاذ لا يبور،
اقرأوا التاريخ تروي عنه أفواه سطور.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور.
فهو كالشمعة تذهب حتى تأتينا بنور، ساهر بالليل علم وبأوقات سحور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي والعصور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي والعصور. أنتم اليوم كنبت قد علا فوق الجذور،
يا أساس الدين يا صرحنا يا صلب الصخور.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Islamic Oasis. Let's call it emergency discussion on what is taking place in the financial world, in the economic, in the economics, especially in the US. As many of you know, brothers and sisters, if you are a student of cryptocurrencies, bitcoins, economy, capitalism, Islamic law, Islamic economics, all of us, I'm sure, are looking at what is happening in the financial world and what's happening with FTX. So what has happened in the last few days, well, this has been going on over a month, but especially in the last few days, Sam Bankman-Fried, I'm sure the name is now become it's a household name now for at least those who've been following the story, also known as SBF, was arrested on Monday at his luxury compound in Nassau at request of the US government. and he was charged with multiple crimes, including conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and campaign financing violations. The Justice Department, Securities and Exchange Commission, and Commodity Futures Trading Commission said Beckman Fried, he's 30 years old, I guess, used consumer deposits on his FTX platform to fund risky bets through his Alameda Research hedge fund. So, of course, there is a lot more to this story. We wanted to cover this with our dear brother, Dr. Jamal, or Brother Jamal Harwood here. He's been on the show before. We spoke about cryptocurrencies in the past. There's a lot of comments. A lot of people wanted the second part to this. And we didn't know that it would just happen like this naturally. So I'll just give you a little bit background regarding Brother Jamal. A chartered accountant in London. He's from UK with experience in management consulting for various firms. Currently, he gives lectures on business and finance, and he's host of Economy Dissected, which I hope all of you are following on Facebook, looking at the world of economics through the lens of Islam. Brother Jamal, welcome to Islamic Oasis Live again.
Assalamu alaikum, and good evening, everyone. It's great to be back.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh, I'm sure you're following what's going on. What is the deal? Is this a fraud or is it just plain capitalism?
I think if we look at it, Bankman-Fried, as you say, 30 years old, young guy, MIT graduate, he set up this, having worked in the financial markets for a few years, he set up this fund, it's a hedge fund called Alameda, and he set it up in the Bahamas, and it was for crypto. Now, of course, over the last 10 years in particular, crypto has been going crazy, a lot of rises and also some falls in crypto. And one of the things is like what they call crypto exchange, where people are investing in various cryptos, and the idea is it's almost like a fund management thing. People invest in stocks and shares and bond markets and currencies and what have you. So in that way, crypto is seen as just another commodity or another asset that people can invest in. But the key point is that he set up this thing, Alameda, he set it up in the Bahamas, and it's an offshore center. So when you have money set up to be run in the Bahamas, it's usually seen as a way to avoid tax or to avoid legislation.
Almost so like an offshore account type of thing.
Yeah, it's like an offshore account, yeah. And a lot of countries, are not so happy about it. But again, a lot of the wealthy people, they do this. They set up their positions overseas. But what he did was he wanted to get hold of US money as well, because he wanted to obviously grow this thing large. So he set up a US-based company called FTT and FTX. And initially, FTX is also Bahamas-based, but then he got approval in the last couple of years for it to be US-based. And that, of course, meant it was opening up to the US market, which is the biggest market, and a lot of money, it was seen as being successful, a lot of money started flowing in. But we're talking about companies which have very little control over them. And with very little control, like, financial control or audit control or oversight, so just a young guy, it's very risky to have this sort of money coming into it. I mean, I'll get back to the whole question of crypto in a minute, but just from a business perspective, there should be warning signals, companies set up in the Bahamas, and then they get an approval to set up a form of that in the US. And then you've got the recipe for money being transferred between the US and the Bahamas, which is what's happened, which has been under the auspices of loans and things like that. But there's no real control there. And the point is that, was he taking this money himself? He also set himself up in Hong Kong. He also, very rapidly rose to be a billionaire, supposedly with $26 billion worth of assets. Now you've got to question, well, where did that come from? Because it's unlikely that a guy in 2-3 years can be, a multi-billionaire, just by trading cryptocurrencies. And this has been a volatile period. So, unless this guy's got some sort of golden touch in terms of trading, that would also ring some warning signals in people's minds. Is this a scam? Is it a Ponzi scheme? Because basically he's getting people to put money in and he's giving them guaranteed returns. He's giving, around about 2019, 2020, he's talking about, 15% returns on the money, getting guarantees in terms of this. So he's acting like a broker and a dealer and a hedge fund all at the same time. And that's a very risky business. I mean, even for the big major banks, they don't get sort of guaranteed 15% returns on that. This is sort of like a Bernie Madoff type position. You may remember Bernie Madoff.
I was going to discuss that.
Time in prison from his of a Ponzi scheme where he was guaranteeing returns. But the public shouldn't be gullible. They shouldn't say, there's some quick, get rich quick scheme. Put your money with this guy and you're gonna become a millionaire and double your money and all this type of stuff. It's usually too risky to be true. And in many cases, like Enron, like Bernie Madoff, there's criminal activity. So I'm not surprised that he was arrested this week and is facing extradition because, the people that have studied it in great detail think that the money was being illegally transferred overseas, and he was basically taking this money and, like a pyramid scheme, you need more people putting the money in because those that go out of the scheme, they need to be paid from somewhere. And all the while he's taking a lot of the money, or supposedly taking a lot of the money. And like the pyramid, ultimately it's going to collapse at some point. And, in the last, few weeks, he's filed for bankruptcy. He's resigned from the firm, the FTX. He's, shot off to the Bahamas, apologies all round and all this. And the point is, you've got to say, well, where's the money? What's been happening to all this money? Has it been catastrophically bad in terms of trading it away, in terms of losses? Or is there some question here about the money being taken?
So it seems like there's a lot of elite personalities involved in this. They were talking about almost 100 corporate entities involved. There are, people. It seems like schools, universities were involved. Some school districts from Canada put in $100 million that they have lost. It is. So, I mean, and then it seems like he was giving money to Democratic contenders, or he's the second donor to huge, political parties, both on the right and the left, I guess both Democratic and Republicans. There are people involved from people who know Obama, people who know. It seems like that's where the money was coming from. I mean, if you have to know that this kind of entities in order to get that kind of money. I mean, you're talking about the guy became a billionaire in 4 years.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, the point is, you're correct. He spent about $40 million supporting the Democrats in terms of the midterm election.
He's second on the list after George Soros.
That's right. Yeah. So the point is that the way the system works, and again, this is a very corrupt aspect of the US political system, is that you have this relationship between donors and the politicians. So the donors look to it to generate favor. amongst the politicians. You know, it's very well known. And the other major corruption that we have when you look at the US regulatory system is what's called a revolving door. So you have a revolving door. This wasn't the case with Bankman-Fried. He's too young for that. But if you look at a lot of the large corporates, the large banks, you know, the major banks, the Goldman Sachs and the JP Morgans and so on, you know, there's like this revolving door between the regulator and the bank, meaning somebody who is working in the bank 1 week, the next week he leaves the bank and he goes to work for the regulator. So he's now regulating the bank. And then sometimes he goes back the other way again. He leaves the regulator, you know, the FEC and the Securities and Exchange Commission. You know, this is ridiculous that you've got lawyers that work for both effectively, maybe not at the same time, but you know, what's the difference between that? And why is it that there's so much money being funneled into these politicians and their political campaigns? And don't think that we're naive to think that there's no relationship there. I mean, a lot of people were actually saying about Bankman-Fried when FTX collapsed a few months back, they were saying, well, why isn't this guy arrested? You know, a lot of people said, why is it taking until this week to have him arrested? You know, the thing is that, you know, obviously he knew people in high places, you know, is doing the interviews and this and that and so on. But it was also really clear that there was a lot of wrongdoing going on in terms of this situation. So, but I think what we want to focus on is we should say that, you know, this is like this Ponzi scheme, and we've seen this back over history so many times, you know, whether it's the Dutch tulips or magic beans or Bitcoin itself. You know, Bitcoin is gone through this massive ups and downs, and basically it's just new instruments. It's new instruments which people, you know, it's the current trend. You know, people are going in there and putting their life savings into it. It's the get rich quick scheme. So there's always going to be people like Bankman-Fried who will take advantage of that, and people will, you know, they'll be cheated. You know, the Bernie Madoffs and so on. So this is really what we should be getting at. And alhamdulillah, Islam, you know, tells us, you know, in terms of what to do in terms of business relationship, in terms of money, in terms of investment, all of these things, we have very clear rules, you know, and if we don't follow those rules, well, then we're subject to being, you know, the victim of a scam, you know. So this type of scam, you know, is all too often, unfortunately.
So Sheikh, here's the thing. So they were talking to this guy from Binance. It seems like he's also to be blamed as far as he supposedly took the money back from. I'm coming to a question here. I just want to kind of give the CEO of Binance. He says that, look, when you look at risk in the regular banking, when people, you know, the banks, they make their money on what's called, you know, I guess it's called fractional reserves, and they invest that money, and they could go into some type of let's say the investment can go wrong, but then these guys can be bailed out by, you know, bigger banks, things like that, or by the central bank. And then it doesn't, but when it comes to cryptocurrencies and things like this, it has no fractional surplus or reserves. So there is no regulation by the banks. Sheikh, in both of these cases, are people, no matter what's going on, are people in general, are their savings always at risk, whether it was crypto or whether it's fiat currency?
It's a good question, and I'll answer it two ways. One thing is that, yes, crypto is at the moment largely unregulated. You know, so this is why it's easy for people to go in, and this is why we have a lot of these what they call altcoins or tokens. You know, people can go in and set up their own coin. You know, a joke coin or I
mean, that's what he did. He set up a coin and gave it value.
Dogecoin, some of them start out as jokes, and then people, put money into it, and they say, ha ha ha, I've just basically taken your money, just given you a token. It's like monopoly money. You can give somebody monopoly money and say, there you go, that's something. I hope you're happy. So the point is that, yes, so the crypto space is largely unregulated, and even Bankman-Fried was raising questions about that and actually putting forward some proposals for regulation. It's sort of like the fox saying we want to look after the hen coop, and we'll put forward all sorts of regulations for you. So in a very unregulated environment, you've got to expect there's going to be a lot of scammers, and there's going to be a lot of things where people can lose their shirt. And that's been happening. A lot of those crypto coins, they've gone up 100% one week and then gone down 100% the next week. So I mean, Bankman-Fried himself, he was, the billionaire list, they said he was worth 26 billion. And then a month later, they say he's worth 900 million. And then after that, they say he's worth nothing. And now he's facing criminal charges and could be in prison for a long time. Or maybe he won't be. Maybe after a long court case, he'll get a rap over the knuckles. So that's one side of it. But then there's the regulated side. So you've got this sort of the banking markets. And if we just go back to 2008, when we had the global financial crisis,
Lehman Brothers and Enron, yeah,
we had this idea. They called it too big to fail. All right, so Lehman went down, and they let Lehman go down, but there was this issue we call counterparty risk. Now, counterparty risk means that, okay, so if Lehman has, a million contracts which are currently on the go with other banks and other institutions, and Lehman collapses overnight, what happens to those other 1,000 contracts with all those other banks and institutions and what have you? It's an almighty mess, right? And a lot of these are in the derivative space, and a lot of these are sort of really major areas. I mean, the derivatives market, the derivatives are not actually contracts for stocks or shares or money, but they're contracts over what stocks and shares and money and other things might do. So it's a bit like, if you owned a horse, you could take the horse down to Sandown and or the Kentucky Derby, and you put him in the race. And if he won the race, then you would win some money as being the owner of that horse. But that's not the way it works. Everyone goes into the betting place or goes down to the track and bets money on the horses they think are going to win or lose. You see, so that's the gambling market. So the actual running the race, the Kentucky Derby or whatever, is only a tiny, tiny element of that market. Most of that market is people betting on which horse is going to win, or which horse is going to come second or third, and so on and so forth. You see what I'm saying? So it's the same thing in financial markets. Most of it is not actually just trading in IBM and Apple and Tesla and all of these other, Microsoft, all of these big companies. There's a lot of that going on, but there's derivative markets in which people are betting on the direction that the market is going. So people bet that the stock market is going to go up, or they bet that the stock market is going to go down, or they're betting on interest rates to see which way interest rates are going to be moving. And which way currencies are going to be moving. They're not actually taking positions in those currencies. They're not owning those currencies. They're not owning those assets. They are betting. They are gambling on the way they're moving. Now, they will say that they're hedging positions and all sorts of words like this, but in effect, this is the reality. So the world economy, if you look at the amount of goods and services across all countries, it's about $60 trillion, which is a lot of money. That's over a course of a year. But if you say that you've got $600 trillion in derivative contracts, you're talking 10 times that, and that is just gambling on that economy, and it may not even be the economy. You could have a derivative contract on what the weather's going to be next week, or how much snow. how much snow is going to fall in Chicago, next month. I mean, all of these things are just forms of gambling.
Sheikh, okay, we're getting echo again.
Okay, I'll sit back a little bit. How's that? Is that all right?
Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah,
still.
I can hear you. No problem. Yeah.
Okay, so so you're talking about, let's say, $600 trillion. I'm just talking about what's happening in the derivatives markets. Okay, let's say up there, the hedge funds and all of these things. So what's stopping from crashing? What's I mean, this thing crashed. Okay, it's a Ponzi scheme, and supposedly what's funny is that I was listening to some different people coming on different shows talking about, okay, there was audits going on with this guy, there were firms coming in and they're doing accountants with this guy, so he was somehow maintaining his whatever that means, accounts, but there were actual firms and but still the thing comes to where it is today. And so even with regulation, what's avoiding the economy to crash in the West in general, especially US economy, with this type of constant up and down going on in the markets?
Yeah, no, well, as I say, it's very destabilizing because, for example, if you have a world economy of 60 trillion, I mean, that's a lot. That's people buying and selling and trading and manufacturing and growing things and all of this type of stuff. Extracting oil and selling oil, that's real stuff. There's real stuff going on there. And there's services, people like, accountants or business people or teachers or dentists or whatever. So that's kind of the real economy. But if on the back of that economy, you've got this derivatives gambling type world, and I would include crypto in that as well, because crypto is not real money. Crypto is not money which is agreed by any government. It's not legal tender by any government. Now, yes, you could buy a Bitcoin or something from one country to another and have your coin or whichever way, so there's help with that. So this sort of non-real market, which is like a gambler's market, because that's really what it is, because people are making money on the movement in these things, meaning that the movement in the stock market up means a lot of people make a lot of money and then other people make a loss. Now, just like when you go down to the betting shop and you put your money on Lucky Boy in the fifth race, and if Lucky Boy loses, well, then you lose, right? And the betting shop takes that money, and somebody else won on the winner, so he takes a payment. So even in the gambling market, things kind of net out. But if this gambling becomes so large, if it becomes such a scale that it's taking down banks, it's taking down countries even, then you've got a problem, because you've got this counterparty risk. Because all the others which are associated with the Lehman, which are associated with the Goldman Sachs and the JP Morgans and the others who got bailouts, they got $9 trillion bailout at the global financial crisis. That's a lot of money, $9 trillion. So they were bailed out in 2008. So that's government going to the taxpayer and saying, well, these banks are too big to fail because it will take the whole system down, so we're going to give you a bailout. And basically the taxpayer has to come up with it.
Here's the question. So now the money, there's two questions I have. One, some of the politicians here are saying that, look, you need cryptocurrency because this may be one of the ways that you can avoid inflation in the future. You can avoid inflations, you can avoid, whatever, recession that's coming up or that they're already in. They keep saying that it's coming up. So one question is, can you really avoid inflation and recession with these currencies? Number one. Number two, are they trying to figure out that that they are in a limbo as far as fiat currency? Because if banks or financial institutions keep falling apart, they can't really, there is no way to really regulate that money. Doesn't matter how much money or cash they pump in the markets, you're going to come back to ground zero again.
Is that okay? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead. I can hear you.
Yeah. So the problem is that a determined crook, like a Bernie Madoff or Enron, is going to game the system. And there's been lots of cases where the accountants have been fooled, so they prepared accounts, and even those accounts were audited, and the crooks got away with it, all right? So in the fully regulated market, there's still going to be crooks and fraudsters and scamsters and what have you. But then you've also got this unregulated market, which is even, looser. It's even more dangerous. And that's where we have this problem. The crypto space is one. I think, first of all, cryptocurrencies, they can be seen as an alternative asset, maybe an asset which would go up in value if there's a demand for it. But the only real utility, the only real usage of cryptocurrencies is in terms of money transference across different markets in the different countries. I.e., for example, if you wanted to take, I don't know, 100,000 US dollars to Britain, you were migrating, you're going to move over here. What you would do is you would normally go to the bank, put your $100,000 into the bank, and then, and then say to the bank, I want you to do a foreign exchange deal to buy British pounds because I'm migrating to Britain. And then the bank will take a charge, and the other bank in the UK will take a charge. And what you get, and then they'll also do an exchange rate transaction, which is probably not going to be very good for you. So maybe you're going to lose 3 or 4% of the money between you moving from the US to the UK just by banks doing foreign exchange deals with your money. And then you get to Britain and you've got, instead of having $100,000 worth of pounds, you've got, maybe $96,000 worth of pounds or $95,000 worth of pounds. So if somebody had bought Bitcoin and they had gone from the US to the UK and they still have their Bitcoin and it's in their name and it's safe and what have you, the Bitcoin is the Bitcoin. Now, obviously, the Bitcoin could have gone down 5% in a day as well, or a week in the time they were moving, or gone up 5%. So people were taking that risk. And then obviously they've gone and used companies like FTX, which have gone and collapsed, and they lost everything. But it's an unregulated space. It's the Wild West out there with this crypto sphere. So this is one thing in terms of this alternative type money, is that it does have some use. It also has, and this is, I think, the most important thing, cryptocurrencies have a blockchain. So the blockchain is technology which is all about, in a way which is supposedly very safe and secure, keeping a record of all the transactions that have happened on the Bitcoin basis. It's very slow, and this is one of the big problems with these cryptocurrencies. They haven't really solved the speed issue yet, meaning that you couldn't, when you use a credit card and you buy a meal in a restaurant, the credit card goes through, in a few seconds. It gets approved in a few seconds. But if you had a card which was linked to, say, Bitcoin, and you were doing a Bitcoin transaction in the restaurant, I'm not talking about an exchange in between you and Bitcoin, but I'm talking about directly with Bitcoin. You might have to wait half an hour for it to kind of clear, so that's not a basis for using Bitcoin for every single transaction. But, and this is the big if, this is the big interesting thing, is that I believe governments have been happy to see cryptocurrencies develop because they're interested in this blockchain technology, because they've been developing their own central bank digital currencies. Now, central bank digital currencies are not cryptocurrencies because there's some big differences between them, but they do have this concept. It's a bit like a blockchain where they want to know every transaction and they want to know every single thing that you do. So if in the future, and again, it's coming pretty close, I mean, they're trialing, Fed coin, they're doing a central bank digital currency trial in the US at the moment with the major banks. And, when they roll that out in the next couple of years, maybe even next year, then they will be forcing everyone to have an account with the central bank, the Federal Reserve. And then you would use a card or a token provided by the central bank, to go into the shop and buy your bubble gum or buy your newspaper or go down to the car dealership and buy a car or buy an airplane ticket. Every single transaction that you do, whether it's buying a stick of bubble gum or whether it's buying a car or a house, will have to go through a central bank. And that means that they're going to know everything you're doing. Now, the other big danger about all of this is that what they're developing is something called programmable central bank digital currencies. And this is what they've got in China already. Programmable central bank digital currencies means that they can put limits on what you can spend. Now, if you don't have cash, and if they outlaw cash and get rid of cash and force you and everyone into using a central bank digital currency, they have your account. And they will, if you ever had the embarrassment of being in a restaurant and you paid with a card and the card got rejected, well, they're in a position that they can reject you. You're saying, right, I'm about to buy an airline flight to, Jordan or Syria or somewhere. And all of a sudden they say, a message comes up and says, sorry, we cannot complete this transaction at the moment. And then when you investigate it, they say, well, we don't have a relationship with that country at the moment. We're not allowing people to fly there. Or that you want to buy a magazine and they don't agree with that magazine, so they can put a block on it.
So, Sheikh, is the issue more, is it risk or is it regulation? I mean, you seem to be saying that, okay, look, it has a lot to do with they can regulate everything that you do, you eat, whatever it is. But if there is regulation, can that remove the risk factor that's there in this currency, on this currency type?
Well, the risk is not like the risk of cryptocurrencies, okay? Because cryptocurrencies are not the currencies of the state, okay? So if you've got, we've got a US dollar at the moment, and it's the main currency in the world. So, most global transactions are in US dollars, most trade, 60-65% is in US dollars and so on. So that's not going away anytime soon. So that is sort of the main currency. Now, obviously, we're unhappy with the US dollar for many reasons, because it's a fiat money, because they print a lot of it. They do quantitative easing. They've printed trillions of it. US has got a major budget deficit. So it's always printing more money. It goes to the markets, in terms of issuing more treasury bills. So this is a money which is not stable, and we can see inflation. Inflation in the US is running at over 7%, 7-8%. Why is that? One of the main reasons is because the currency is devaluing. So that food in your shops that you're buying, it's not that the food has gone up in price, it's just that the value of the money has gone down. And when the value of the money, they can blame Vladimir Putin, they can blame COVID-19, they can blame whatever they like. One of the biggest factors is that you've got an unstable currency because they print an awful lot of them. They've got $20 trillion of debt. which is excess money created. So that's a risk factor. All right. Now, the other one is what we've been talking about earlier, which is like the regulatory one, which is like the crypto space, which the Bankman-Frieds and this type can take advantage of. And yes, the US dollar and the Fed coin and the central bank digital currency will be more secure, but secure in an authoritarian sort of way. We're going the way of China. China can put a block on your account. The Federal Reserve or the American government could put a block on your account. And if you don't have cash, and if they don't allow cash, which I believe that they'll phase out in the next few years, then you're in trouble because you use money to buy things. So even if you've got money in your account, they can put a block on it if they want.
But Sheikh, I mean, look, think about for a second now. Even let's say in Lebanon now, there is people have millions. We were listening, the other day there are people saying that look, we have millions in the account, but we can only take out $400 a month. So you could have money. It's happening with fiat currency, and then you have. At this point, people's accounts could be closed even now with fiat currency. It doesn't have to be, crypto or Bitcoin.
But add all these extras in. They can control. Look. There's a whole climate change issue at the moment. Now, I don't believe a lot of this in terms of climate change. Okay, some of it is fair enough, but I really don't believe a lot of it. So what they're doing is they're doing new forms of tax where they say, well, if we don't do this, the environment is going to collapse and the world will come to an end. All right? Basically, this is the type of scaremongering that we're getting. So, they will be doing green taxes. They'll be doing environmental taxes. So, for example, when you get into your car and you drive from city to city, they may start taxing you more when you drive further, you see. And they could call that an environmental tax, all right? Now, what are you going to do about that? And basically, or they could take additional taxes direct from your account. Just go to your account and take it. There won't be anything to stop because they hold your account. At the moment, you've got a choice. You can hold money as cash, and you can go into the corner shop and buy things with cash. But in the future, you won't be able to do that. This is an important step. And they'll go to your bank account and they'll start taking taxes out, and you will have to go to them and claim, to get your taxes back if they've taken too much. So this is an authoritarian world. This is a controlled world. I'm not scaremongering. This is what they're doing. They're doing this in China, and they're following the same model. The key is it's what they call programmable central bank digital currencies. It means that, those currencies control you. It's not that your money is something that gives you freedom to buy and do what you like. It's going to be that they will control you with your money. This is what they'll be doing.
So on the other side, there'll be, I guess, more flexibility, ease. Is that, you don't have to carry cash.
Yeah, this is what they'll say, and they'll say there'll be less fraud, and they'll say there'll be less people doing tax evasion, and yes, there's some advantages like that, but the disadvantages for the public to be under the control of, central government in terms of your account is very, very dangerous, and this is a very dangerous. When these politicians are talking about that, you may be able to avoid inflation. This is an innovation that they need to look at, and if they just regulate it, is this true? No, completely untrue. Completely untrue. The thing is that look at the inflation we have now. The Federal Reserve has got a target of inflation of no more than 2%. All right? So if it's running at 7.7%, which I believe it is at the moment in the US, and has done for the last 2 years, don't you think they should be sacked? They should be taken out and sacked. They've failed, haven't they? Completely, miserably failed. But they get up there and they make these big statements and they say, oh, Vladimir Putin, look what he's done to the energy market and this and that. You know, the US, the US is energy self-sufficient. It has as much oil and gas as anybody, right? When you include fracking and so on. You know, they're exporter of energy. So why is the price of gas going up? You know, you've got to ask these questions. You know, look, why is the value of the money going down? And you say, oh, okay, well, you've got central bank policies whereby they print money because the politicians overspend. And when they overspend, they need to borrow that money, or they print it, or they create it out of nothing. So there's nothing in a central bank digital currency which will stop them from doing that. In fact, I would expect them to do more and more of that.
So, Sheikh, I mean, when we talk about value, I mean, you know, we were discussing whether, let's say, when we look at cryptocurrencies, is the only reason that it actually has value is that people are putting their fiat currency, they're buying a coin that is really not worth anything, and then they're exchanging. Well, not exchanging. They're saying, okay, look, I'm gonna put my money here and make this coin worth $20, and then all of a sudden, you know, the value keeps increasing. Let's say cryptocurrency in this case. So what you would need some type of, whether it's asset or currency, something that gives that cryptocurrency value. So you would always need something that's always backing it, right, in general?
Islamically, we must have a currency which is based on gold and silver, and that is something real. It's something tangible. So you go to the Beit al-Mal, you go to the central bank in Islam, and if the Khilafah state issues dinars and dirhams with paper or notes, they must be 100% backed by gold and silver, which means that basically gold and silver is the money, right? And of course, our policy is that you can trade directly with gold and silver. So you're dealing with something which is real. Okay, in the same way that if you go down to your local market on a Saturday morning and there's a farmer there selling eggs, and you say to him, you know, I'd like to get 10 dozen eggs, but I don't have any money. But listen, I'm an electrician by trade. I will come to your farm and I'll give you half a day's work checking your electricity sockets and your electrical system. I'll do half a day's work for you and you give me a few dozen eggs. Is that a good deal? So that's a barter, that's a trade. My service for his eggs, you see. So that's the way it used to work in the old days. There used to be barter, and it's very inefficient, okay? Because sometimes you don't have a tradable commodity or you don't have a tradable service. So then you would have money. So money would come in where people would say, okay, here's some silver coins. So I use the silver coins to buy a sheep, all right? And then the farmer takes the silver coins and he goes and buys some other food, or he buys some feed for his sheep so he can have another batch of sheep in a few months' time. You see, so money makes it a lot easier. But in history, over thousands of years, money only worked when it was of value, right? Now, somebody says, here's a Bitcoin. It's got such and such a value, $17,000 for a Bitcoin. Now, there's an exchange and you can go and get a Bitcoin for $17,000. Now, does it mean it's worth that? Well, somebody's prepared to pay for that, so that's what it's worth. Now, if you're collecting baseball cards, all right, I know a lot of young kids, when I was a young guy, when I was a young guy, they used to have baseball cards, right? Now, the baseball card is written on a card and it's got a nice picture and it's got some stats and what have you. Okay, but a young guy is going to like to have that and he's going to collect them, right? Now, maybe some of those baseball cards if he goes on eBay or somewhere, they're worth a lot of money. Somebody's going to pay for that, even though materially it's not worth a lot. It's a piece of cardboard. You see, so the value is what the market is going to give to something. Now, with all of this scam and collapse with FTX and all these sorts of things, we're going to see a lot of collapses in the crypto space. Maybe Bitcoin will do okay, and maybe other ones will go to zero. It doesn't matter. But the point is that there's always a market for something when people were prepared to buy and sell it. But that's not what we're talking about here. When we're talking about money, we're talking about something which a government is going to back up. So the problem we have is since 1971, when Richard Nixon said, right, we're not going to back up the dollar with gold anymore. It's just going to be free floating currencies. And everyone said, no, well, our money is all free floating as well, which means that they did not give gold in backing up the currencies anymore. And from that time, gold went from $35 an ounce. It's now $1,800 an ounce, and is going to go worse as well, meaning that the gold hasn't gone up in value. It's just the dollar's gone down. It's lost most of its value, and it's going to continue to lose its value because governments just keep printing more and more money. So this is the problem with the modern day fiat money. So we need to get back to what Islam tells us, which is gold and silver as money. And really the only state, the only people that have that as their policy is the Muslims. Under the Khilafah state, it has to be gold and silver. So there's no other alternative. We can't have cryptocurrencies. We can't have dollar, euro, yen, pound, all that stuff. They're all fiat money. So we will have gold and silver as money. And that will be what the Khilafah state uses, the next caliphate.
Inshallah, bismillah ta'ala. Sheikh, just another, in the need for creating these, why do these systems, let's say capitalism, why does it have this need to constantly create new money? As far as I understand the inflation and all of this, the mechanisms by itself that they have to control money itself is, either creates money out of thin air or just, there's so much waste of paper. But at this point, what else can the governments do? Obviously, other than adopt Islam.
What do the governments want? The governments want the blockchain technology. And this is why I think that they have tolerated the development of cryptocurrencies over recent years, because a lot of smart people went into that space and developed blockchain technologies. Then those governments went and they said, thank you very much. We use those blockchain technologies and we use your experience to now do our central bank digital currencies. So I think that's what they've done. So that's really their benefit. Now, the public, some of them wanted to get rich quick, so you've got these Bitcoin millionaires and billionaires, and some of them legitimately wanted to avoid banking charges because they were moving from one country to another, or they were traveling and they didn't like what the banks were charging them in terms of foreign exchange and all that, so there is some utility there.
So are we looking at, for that purpose, for instance, when we, even sometimes when we, as a nonprofit, let's say, right, we are building things, let's say overseas, things like this, it does cost us sometimes just for transfers. Just the amount whatever it is that we're building, bigger projects, small projects, whatever it is, I guess the question is, are we looking at the future? Is cryptocurrency this more and more businesses, more and more nonprofits, more and more people who are in business, are they going to move towards cryptocurrency because cost of business, just to avoid cost of business?
I hope not. I hope not. I really hope not, because I believe that the the crypto space is largely unregulated and it is not real money. In fact, it's a further step away from real money. So you've got real money, gold and silver, and then you've got non-real money, which is fiat money, but at least is backed by the governments, which means you can take somebody to a court of law and demand payment in terms of that money. And that's the money that the country is using, and that's what your salary is going to be paid in, and that's what your taxes will be paid in, and all of that. So that's basically the formal money in this non-Islamic space. And then you go further afield, all right? Then you get into the realms of cryptocurrencies and all of these sorts of things, which are not backed by governments. Governments do not back them up. So you're out on a limb. It's a gamble, and I don't think it's much of a step between that and going into the betting shop and gambling on the horse in the next race. You see what I'm saying? Is that this is a kind of, at least the betting shop is regulated to a certain extent, but some of this crypto world is not regulated. And maybe even if they bring regulation in, I don't see the value as being that much, meaning that, there's ways of transferring money overseas and all of this type of stuff using the fiat money and so on. So this is I think that element of utility in the crypto space is overemphasized, and I don't think it's as valuable as people say. I don't think Bitcoin is worth $17,000 for a Bitcoin. Now, obviously, people are paying for that. So who am I to argue? But the point is that's basically, if somebody's going to spend $17,000 on a baseball card, good luck to him. I'm sure your mother would say, don't buy, the baseball card at $17,000. But, I'm sure somebody's doing it, aren't they?
Sheikh, what will be the effect on poverty with this? Because, poverty meaning as far as the growth of poverty, because not everybody is able to do these. This takes a lot of understanding of finance, economics, technology. You have to have you have to have resources to be able to do these kind of things. And if average person who's just going to work or whatever, coming back has he doesn't have the understanding or the knowledge that is needed to do, just a simple transaction. Is this going to increase poverty if this thing goes on the way they are?
The poverty point is a good point to raise, but it's an unrelated matter to crypto. The thing is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said the son of Adam has no better right than to have food, shelter, and clothing. So what the Prophet ﷺ is saying, that every human being, Muslim, non-Muslim, wherever in the world, has no better right. That's the key right they have: food, shelter, clothing. And then in addition, we say education and healthcare and security. So those are basically the rights that we need to provide. So when you're getting into that, now the responsibility for that is with every adult and every husband and every father, and every family and every neighborhood and every government, right? So we have a distribution issue as well as an issue of actual what is the poverty. So the point is that we've got lots of wealth in the world, but it's been accumulating into the hands of a few people. And when it accumulates into the hands of a few people, so those people, for example, they don't pay zakat. Zakat at 2.5% of the many billions which they have, would solve poverty in a bat of an eye. If the United Nations, they did a study. They said if the top 250 fortunes in the world, the Bill Gateses of this world and the Larry Ellisons and all the Elon Musks of this world, if they just paid a percent or two of their wealth into a fund, then you would solve the issue of clean water and a lack of food around the world like that. I mean, that's just for 250. But we know in Islam that the zakat is paid 2.5% over a certain value, which is not being utilized. And the nisab value is a lot higher than being a billionaire. We're talking about, about 1,000, 1,200 US dollars, something like that. So we're talking about, incredible amounts of wealth, which will be available for the poor, the indebted, the miskeen. This is a way to solve poverty. It's not by coming up with some get-rich-quick scheme of a new cryptocurrency or trading in baseball cards. I could say it's the same thing. Same thing. Go trade in baseball cards and you'll make a lot of money. No, go trade in Bitcoin. You make a lot of money. And then this is, did Bankman-Fried put his money out and solve world poverty? No, he put the money back into politicians' hands. This is what he was doing.
Although he was talking about altruism and how much money he's going to give out to,
they talk a good shot. They do.
I mean,
they do talk a good shot, these guys.
Right. So, okay. So I guess the more, in some ways, what I'm getting from you is the more innovation that is happening in this, the currency world, in the finance world, the more money or the wealth is being put in the hands of very, very few as this goes on, because this is, and it's not sustainable in reality. These kind of collapses, Sheikh, these kind of, Bernie Madoffs or Bernie Madoff, and there was lying, fraud, money laundering. It's becoming so common as we go on, Sheikh, that it's.
I think the point is that the public, they're losing confidence in the system.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. In the US, it's really polarized.
Yeah. Look at today. We were looking at just the stock market.
The left and the right are really polarized. What is it? 40% of the public, they don't even believe the last election was right. They believe it was stolen. So there's no respect for an election result. I don't know. Maybe it was stolen or not. I don't know the facts of the case. But the point is that that's pretty serious when such a large percentage of the public are at loggerheads, with the other party.
And I wouldn't be surprised that if they actually use this whole situation, saying that this guy was using their money, billions of dollars, and giving it to the politicians. That's not even coming up yet. Yeah, that's discussion is not even actually happening. It is, but it's kind of being put under the carpet. But I'm sure it's going to be something to be discussed in the coming elections. That look, elite are they're coming up with innovative ways to make money, and then the money is coming back reversing back into the pockets of the very rich or the elite. So I wonder how much more polarization we're going to see as we go on.
Yeah, you're talking about many billions of dollars which were lost effectively from, say, FTX. And so, well, it would be really interesting to see actually what happened to that money. Where did it go?
Oh, yeah.
Who took that and benefited. But, you're right. I don't think it's going to come out. I think you could follow the court case and this and that and everything else, but I don't think it's going to come out, which is, a lot of people which are being seriously affected by that, losing their savings and losing their assets. It's a scandal, really.
Epstein didn't last more than 2 weeks in jail. He was killed, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it was, that he committed suicide. Supposedly he committed suicide. And then now I wonder if this guy goes to jail, how long he has. Just the names that are involved are beyond belief.
But yeah, that's right. But what's happened is the public are losing confidence in the system. This is the thing. They don't have confidence in their politicians because they see this corruption. They don't have confidence in a lot of the business people because they can see these sorts of scams and things like that, and they can see fraud and on a wide scale. So this is a bad recipe for society. Crime goes up. In this type of society, crime goes up, and everyone is becomes less secure. It's a disaster.
Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Sheikh, wallah, jazakallah khair for your time. I know we took more than we asked. It's over an hour now. And jazakallah khair for agreeing to have this discussion in an emergency kind of way. I mean, I know it's a developing story. It just happened 2-3 days ago. And I'm sure there's so much more that is going to come out of all of this. And we have to continuously discuss this and provide Islam as the final solution. All of these ups and downs, all of these scams, all of this, supposedly, people look at wealth and money as something that is going to save them and save their families and protect them and be able to put something on the table while they're losing money, billions in seconds, and are on streets. And pensions were lost. Billions worth of pensions were lost. People work so hard for their money, and now, subhanAllah, everybody's on the streets trying to figure out what's going to happen. And even if they put this guy in jail, what happens to them? Who's going to bail them out? So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the Muslims the tawfiq and the understanding to continuously bring the discussion of Islam and Islamic economics, Islamic economic system as a solution to humanity. And this is one of the reasons why we're constantly doing this, so that it's right there in the faces of people and saying, look, it's time to look at an alternative, which is Islam. And Jazakallah khair, Brother Jamal, for your time. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family. And inshallah, I'm sure you'll have to come back for part 2 again. Part 3 of cryptocurrency. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Inshallah, brothers and sisters, then we'll see you guys next Friday. Please continue watching, watch this space. There's a lot of very interesting people are coming and discussing recent events. Some of them you might be shocked, inshallah. So see you guys next Friday. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
لا لن يطول الظلام، ديننا لن يضام، نحن جيل همام، نحن فينا عمر. لا 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 لن يطول الظلام، ديننا لن يضام، نحن جيل همام، نحن فينا عمر. صبح بدا نور ظهر، نجم وشمس وقمر، ألقى على الدنيا الدرر. هذا عمر، هذا عمر، كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر كي تستفيد من العبر. هذا عمر، هذا عمر. لا لن تدوم الجراح، بل سيأتي الصباح، نحن أهل الكفاح، نحن فينا عمر. لا لن تدوم الجراح، بل سيأتي الصباح، نحن أهل الكفاح.